Hello everyone. Before we begin, I want to take you through the process I underwent while choosing a topic for today's talk. In today's world of judgment and insecurities, we have to be extremely careful of the things we can and can't say. There are many topics that are considered controversial and in some cases even out of bounds. You can't talk about them or have a discussion about them. You can't even express your opinion on them if they happen to deviate from the mass accepted agreement and stance. Topics like cancel culture, movements on socio-political issues, and other sensitive topics like racism, sexism, casteism, and communism are, for lack of a better word, dangerous. Talking about such topics makes people scared and anxious or uncomfortable at the very least. It takes great courage and confidence to have an open discussion about these topics. And that is exactly how I felt while choosing a topic for today's talk. Will people judge me? Will they hate me for this? Or worse, will they attack me, physically or verbally, for the opinions that I have expressed today? For the first time in my life, I was afraid of what I was going to say. Oh, I'm not talking about manners or way of speaking and such, but I'm referring to the blockage of ideas and opinions. And it hurts, when you're living in a free, democratic country and you're afraid of what will happen because you said something. When freedom of speech and expression comes under one of the fundamental rights of the citizens, and yet you can't express yourself freely due to that fear. And that is exactly when I thought, what if I talk about this fear of ideas and opinions? Thus, today we shall discuss the commonality of every socio-political issue in the world, freedom of speech and expression, or the lack thereof. Now, a few of you will think that I'm being absurd, that we aren't at a point where we lack free speech, and that I am over exaggerating stuff to suit myself and my opinions. But only the other day, a friend of mine gave a speech on the toxicity of the body positivity movement, and my suspicions were confirmed. I found a slew of more comments expressing respect and admiration towards her for choosing to go for such a polarizing topic. A topic that people are so unwilling to talk about and taking it on headfirst. I also heaped praise on her because it was true. No one does want to talk about it, and it took great courage for her to do so. And that is where the flaw lies. The fact that something like this was unusual and surprising is in and of itself a sad thing. Discussions on such controversial topics should not only be encouraged but normalized. There shouldn't be any semblance of surprise or apprehension while talking about these topics. And we are far off from normalizing this. So, I'm going to tackle each area where free speech is lacking individually. A 2015 survey by Pew Research Center showed that about 40% of young people in America, ranging from the ages 18 to 34, thought that free speech was dangerous. They wanted the government to be able to ban speech that would or could offend people, especially those from the minorities. Another survey by Forbes showed that more than 46% of college students wanted inclusion to take the upper hand over free speech, to prevent hate speech regarding opinions on sex, race, abortions, and other prevalent social political issues. I'll come back to this later. The studies show that free speech is waning in the younger generations in support of political correctness. Topics like racism, casteism, sexism, communalism, abortion, types of economy deserve to be talked about, not made into some sort of unspeakable areas. Topics like women empowerment, sex education, casteism, etc. are still very much shut off in the rural areas of India. This leads to an increase in 1,000 undesirable things like increasing child marriage, caste-based violence, untouchability, decrease in female education, etc. Simply outlawing this isn't enough. There need to be discussions about it. People need to learn why it is time to think differently. This can only be achieved through an open and free platform for debate, discussion, and a free flow in ideas. Flaws in various religious philosophies and ideologies need to be called out to make way for a better society. Flaws in the taboos prevalent in India need to be debated and solved. Banning them only satisfies the people afraid of change and the people thirsting for immediate change. We can't, as these people believe, effect useful change in a few months. It needs time, patience, and perseverance for its success in the long run. What is missed here is the implications of banning speech. No one's mind is changed by simply being prohibited to speak their mind. In fact, another research by Cato suggests that prohibitions of expression of belief makes people more confident in them. Banning speech does not solve the many socio-political problems faced by society, but closes discussion that could actually lead to rational and logical solutions. If we are to arrive at a real solution to these issues, we need to talk about them openly and listen to all perspectives. Shutting off one point of view isn't going to help in anything. Free speech and expression is the only way we can hope to actually progress and find reasonable solutions to unreasonable issues. Perhaps the most dangerous threat to free speech in India and the USA is the ever increasing fear of the entertainment media. Mainstream media and news channels like CNN and Fox News like to present the world as a war between two extremes, leaving no room for rational thought in between and instilling fear in the mind of the people who just end up staying silent about their views and ideas. These news channels follow the age-old methods of building a mountain from a molehill to prevent the free flow of ideas and discussions. Mass media and entertainment have also become victims to this attack on free speech. Many films and books are banned from release every year because some vocal minority group claims that it hurts the group's sentiments or is highly inappropriate regarding the group. And those which aren't banned are extensively cut and censored. Censorship. Perhaps the most dangerous threat to mass media and free flow of ideas in India is censorship. According to a report by The Hindu, nearly 800 films were banned in India by the censor board in the span of 16 years between 2000 and 2016. That equates to about 50 films each year. Consider the average length of the movie to be 2 hours. That is 1600 worth of hours prohibited from reaching the Indian public. Most of these films didn't even appear to violate any laws regarding hate speech or religious sentiments. For example, the Da Vinci Code, which was banned in 2006 and only released years later. Yet the government has to ban them, courtesy of socio-political pressure. The people of India are very paranoid about change in idea, change in mindset, and change in the fundamental Indian thought process. And this has to change. Back in January, a comedic entertainer was arrested in Madhya Pradesh for some unsavory or distasteful remarks. Now, I won't get into the nature of the subjects of those remarks because they don't matter to the point I'm trying to make. However, I shall tell you that they weren't that far out there. Regardless of the remarks he made, regardless of about whom those remarks were, the fact that someone could get arrested on the basis of a few jokes says a lot about the nature of this country. Comedy is a way to lighten up the ever serious issues that plague us and create a better environment to talk about them. Last I checked, jokes usually meant that the statements weren't to be taken seriously. They were made to be laughed about and then reflected on. Jokes were the best way to ensure open discussions on sensitive topics without getting real uncomfortable real fast. But unfortunately, the modern attack on free speech has made even jokes something that we need to worry about, something out of bounds, so to speak. One of the most popular and prevalent arguments against free speech is the prohibition and regulation of free hate speech and offensive statements. This seems to be a good idea. Hate speech is defined as public speech that expresses hate or encourages violence towards a person or a group based on religion, sex, caste, orientation, etc. In India, laws against hate speech, especially sections 153A and 295A of the Indian Penal Code, prohibit speech or expressions which promote discrimination and disharmony on the basis of gender, race, religion, etc., and speech or expression that makes deliberate and malicious attempts to outrage religious sentiments. Sounds good, right? I mean, who wouldn't want discriminatory people silenced, apart from themselves, of course? But the problem arises when we try to define these forms of speech. And this leads us to two very important questions. The first of which being, who defines hate speech? Who sets those parameters out of which speech is considered hateful and malicious? How do we classify statements as deliberate and malicious attempts to demote a religion? Answer: we can't. There is no way that we can say a particular statement definitely meant to incite hate and violence unless they're actually screaming it. The Indian law, for example, allowed the insult of religion on the basis of social reforms and debates. But who differentiates between hate and debate? No one. There is always something that can offend someone or the other, but to classify it as deliberate and malicious is an entirely different matter. This is one war we cannot win. And the second question is, what are the limits of free speech? As I mentioned, free speech is an essential part of progress and innovation in modern civilization. But when does it stop? Or is it infinite and limitless? Answer: it isn't. There are a few organizations and ideas that we could do better without. Some organizations that free speech should not protect. Organizations like the KKK and Antifa, which are basically hate groups, should be called out and dissolved if possible. So yes, free speech does have its limitation. It isn't invincible, it isn't untouchable, and it definitely isn't unaccountable. But that being said, it should be exempt from government intervention as much as possible. Now, we reach the most important of discussions about free speech. What does this imply for a democratic nation? What does it say about the actual freedom of its people and of criticisms and innovations of the country? History has shown us time and again that free speech is essential to a free and democratic country. A country where the freedom of speech is in danger is a country whose democracy is in danger. History, being the best teacher, has taught us countless times that prohibition and regulation and allowed speech is the first step toward an autocratic government. I know it sounds absurd to compare today's situation with the dictatorships of the past, but I don't think we're at that point, at least not yet. But this is how it starts every time: prohibition of ideas, prohibition of critique, and propagation of propaganda. Now, whether it is desirable to us as Indian citizens is for you all to decide. But everyone is happy until they're the ones being attacked. As for me, I may not approve of what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Thank you.